Some teachings try to control love, to put it into instructions, formulas, and checklists. Kahlil Gibran does the opposite. He lets love remain wild, and then shows us how to be worthy of it. In his pages, love is not something you manage, it is something you answer. It's a call, a wind, a fire, a sea. If you hear it, you move. If you resist it, you harden. If you welcome it, you are remade. Gibran's lesson begins with a warning disguised as an invitation. When love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. This is not romantic pessimism, it's spiritual honesty. Love will take you up a mountain that you cannot climb in your old shoes. It will demand new feet. It will bring you to thresholds where your habits cannot pass. It will strip you of the little tricks you rely on to keep control, because love is not a negotiation, it is a purification. He writes that love is for your growth, and in the same breath, for your pruning. That pairing is the heart of Gibran's wisdom. Growth without pruning is indulgence. Pruning without growth is cruelty. Real love cuts and crowns at once. It removes what is false so that what is true can breathe. This is why Gibran's lovers do not sound like consumers chasing experiences. They sound like pilgrims learning to carry a flame through wind. What then does love actually give? Listen to the daring simplicity of this line. Love gives naught but itself and takes naught but from itself. In other words, love is not an exchange. It does not ask for receipts. It doesn't calculate how much it is given and how much it is owed. The moment we begin to score keep, we have left love and entered business. Love gives because giving is its nature. This is why Gibran follows with a second shock. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love. Possession is the opposite of reverence. When you try to own what is sacred, you lose sight of the sacred. Love is not a thing to put in your pocket. It is a landscape you enter and a sky you stand under together. The measure of mature love is not how tightly you hold, but how freely you bless. And yet Gibran is not naive about how easily we try to steer love toward our preferences. So he adds, think not you can direct the course of love, for love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Notice the condition, if it finds you worthy. Worthiness here is not about perfection or purity. It's about willingness. Are you willing to be taught? Are you willing to surrender the scripts of ego, how you must be seen, how the story must go, and let love write a better script in you? If love is teacher, what does the classroom look like? Gibran's metaphors are agricultural, elemental, tactile, threshing floors, roots and branches, sacred fire. Why? Because he wants us to feel love's work in the body. You will be sifted to free you from your husk. You will be kneaded until you are pliant. This is not punishment. It is preparation. A heart that has never been kneaded cannot feed many. But love is not only intensity, it is also architecture. In On Marriage, Gibran draws one of the most beautiful blueprints for intimacy ever written. Stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart. Two pillars carry one roof because they are not fused. Closeness without space is suffocation. Space without closeness is abandonment. Love asks for both, union that honors difference, difference that deepens union. Fill each other's cup, he says elsewhere, but drink not from one cup. This is not distance, it's dignity. Still, anyone who has loved knows the strangest paradox. Love frees us and binds us. Gibran faces that truth in Sand and Foam. You are a slave to him whom you love because you love him. What kind of slavery is this? Not the slavery of ownership, but the holy bondage of devotion. The beloved's joy becomes your joy, their pain, your pain. You can no longer pretend to live for yourself alone, and yet, because you have chosen this yoke freely, you are more free than before, free from indifference, free from the tyranny of self. So how do we practice love like this? Love that cuts and crowns, that gives without possessing, that honors space and devotion. Gibran does not hand us techniques, he offers dispositions. First, the disposition of courage. Follow when love beckons, even if the map is unclear. Real love will ask you to risk misunderstanding, to outgrow an old identity, to forgive what you swore you never could. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the consent to be changed. Second, the disposition of humility. Let love lead. When you notice yourself managing outcomes, if I do X, then they'll do Y. Pause. Return to the vow. Love must remain love, not a strategy to secure comfort or control. Ask, what would love do here if it didn't need to win? You will be surprised how many conflicts dissolve under that question. Third, the disposition of spaciousness. Make room for the other to be other. This is the pillar's wisdom. Do not ask your beloved to be your mirror. Do not ask them to be the missing half of you. Ask them to be fully themselves and stand close enough and far enough for both of you to sing. Fourth, the disposition of endurance. Gibran's love is not episodic passion, it is a long obedience. There will be seasons, threshing, sifting, grinding, kneading, then fire. Endure them. If you only stay for the sweetness of spring, you will never taste the bread of harvest. Fifth, the disposition of gratitude. Gibran closes on love with a daily rhythm. Wake with a winged heart, rest at noon to meditate love's ecstasy, return home in gratitude, sleep with a prayer for the beloved. Gratitude makes love renewable. Without it, love burns out on expectation. Perhaps the most practical sentence for modern lovers is the simplest. Love is sufficient unto love. Do not make your partner the guarantor of your worth. Do not turn love into a brand you must perform on social media. Do not confuse attention with affection or compatibility with covenant. Instead, keep returning to sufficiency. When love is allowed to be love, it will grow you into someone who can love. And if you are listening today from a place of heartbreak, Gibran's lesson is still for you. The cutting was not the end of the story. The pruning was not a verdict, but a promise. What is lost in love is not wasted. It is compost for compassion, seed for future tenderness. The wound is where the light entered, teaching you to recognize the same light in others. If you let it, this pain can make you a safer place for someone else's heart. So we begin our journey with the door of love, because it is the door all others swing upon. Freedom without love becomes detachment. Work without love becomes burnout. Joy without love becomes amusement. Even death without love is only loss. With love, it is a homecoming. Let love be the first teacher, the last companion, the measure by which you examine every lesson to come. Key lines to carry with you tonight: follow when love calls, give without possessing, make space for the other, let love direct your course, and trust that every season, spring and threshing, kneading and fire, is forming a heart that can hold more life. We talk about freedom as if it were a door someone else keeps locked. In Kahlil Gibran's poetry, freedom begins far closer, with the keys we carry inside our own pockets and forget to use. He does not picture freedom as escape. He pictures it as presence, an inner sovereignty that no guard can confiscate, no decree can revoke, no turn of fortune can erase. If love is the first door to a larger life, freedom is the corridor that connects all the others. Without it, love becomes possession, work becomes drudgery, and joy becomes a passing distraction. With it, everything we touch begins to breathe. When Gibran writes on freedom, he refuses the easy definition, a life without burdens. He suggests something braver, that you are truly free not when nothing presses on you, but when what presses on you does not own you. Cares will come, grief will visit, responsibilities will call you by name. Freedom is not the absence of these guests. It is the art of receiving them without surrendering your soul. The free person does not deny the storm. They learn how to stand in it without becoming weather. How do we get there? Gibran's first move is to turn us around, away from the prisons we can point at and toward the prisons we carry. He describes chains we forge ourselves, habits that started as comforts and hardened into cages, opinions we mistook for truth and then guarded like treasure, stories we told about who we are until they became the only rooms we knew how to live in. The key insight is tender and demanding at once. You cannot be free while you secretly cherish your fetters. Examine what you defend most fiercely. Ask why. At the center of every unnecessary rule we enforce on ourselves, there is usually fear pretending to be wisdom. Gibran then asks us to look at our relationship with law and order, outer rules, inner rules, the agreements that make life together possible. He is not against law. He is against the kind of law that replaces living conscience with dead habit. When duty becomes an alibi for not listening, when routine replaces reverence, when the sign points so loudly that we no longer see the road, freedom fades. The point is not to destroy all structures. The point is to choose structures that keep the door of the spirit unlocked. The best rules protect the flame, the worst rules blow it out. There is a subtle test he offers. If a law gives you an excuse to ignore the human being in front of you, be careful. Freedom is relational. The freer you are, the more fully you can see others, without needing to use them, fear them, or control them. In that sense, freedom deepens responsibility. It does not remove it. The unfree person obeys because they must. The free person serves because they may. One is fear with a mask. The other is love with sleeves rolled up. Gibran also refuses the false choice between head and heart. In a luminous image, he pairs reason and passion the way a sailor pairs rudder and sail. A boat with only a rudder goes nowhere. A boat with only a sail is at the mercy of every gust. So it is with us. Reason keeps us from drifting into wishful thinking. Passion keeps us from worshiping caution. Freedom is not choosing one and despising the other. Freedom is learning their dance, letting truth steer while fire drives. When your days tilt toward calculation, loosen the line and let the wind fill you again. When your days blur with impulse, steady your hand on the helm. There is another counterfeit Gibran exposes, mistaking comfort for freedom. Comfort is a welcome guest. It is a poor master. The more we cling to it, the more our world shrinks to the size of our preferences. We wake to discover that the chairs we chose for their softness make us stiff, that the little habits we indulged for relief have arranged themselves into walls. Freedom does not despise comfort, but it refuses to mortgage tomorrow's strength for today's ease. It asks, will this choice make me larger or smaller? Will it teach me to trust my soul or to consult my fears before I move? Because Gibran speaks to the inner life, it is tempting to hear him as calling us away from society. He does the opposite. He calls us into society with an uncluttered heart. The person who is inwardly free can participate without being swallowed, can work, build, vote, dissent, marry, and parent without turning any of these into an idol. They can live among laws without making law their god. They can hold convictions without needing enemies. They can give generously without bargaining for applause. Freedom, in this sense, is not withdrawal. It is clarity. It lets you enter the world without confusing its noise for your name. What does this look like in the day-to-day? Gibran's counsel reads like quiet practices, simple enough to begin now, deep enough to last a lifetime. First, practice choosing rather than sliding. The unfree life is a series of default settings. The news you always consume, the outrage you always rehearse, the self-talk you never question. Pause at small hinges. What you reach for when you're tired, what you say when you're slighted, how you spend the first 10 minutes of your morning. Choosing those 10 minutes on purpose may sound small. It is not. It is you walking to the cell door and testing the handle. Second, practice naming instead of numbing. Freedom is allergic to vagueness. If a worry circles your mind, write it down. If a desire is asking to be born, give it a name. Gibran's voice urges honesty that is neither brutal nor evasive. Once named, fears shrink to the size of the truth. Unnamed, they impersonate destiny. Third, practice limits that make you spacious. Some boundaries protect laziness, others protect life. Learn which is which. A vow to keep your phone out of reach for the first hour of the day is not austerity for its own sake. It is air for your soul. A decision to hear before replying, to walk before deciding, to rest before collapsing. These are not denials of freedom. They are its guardians. Fourth, practice work as devotion rather than escape. In the Prophet, work is the visible shape of love. When you treat work as your way of giving yourself, not proving yourself, you untangle your identity from your output. Then you can labor without becoming brittle, stop without becoming guilty, and say enough without the panic that you are about to disappear. Fifth, practice forgiveness as self-respect. Freedom does not mean pretending harm was harmless. It means recovering your power to define what the harm can do next. When you forgive, you do not excuse the wound. You stop letting the wound draft your future. You turn the key, open the door, and step into a room where the past can no longer rearrange the furniture. Finally, practice silence, not as emptiness, but as listening. Gibran's lines move with the cadence of prayer. He places wisdom in pauses as much as pronouncements. In silence, your motives unmask themselves. In silence, you hear which desires are merely loud and which are truly yours. The world will keep speaking. Freedom chooses which voices to host. The miracle in Gibran's teaching is that none of this requires permission. No announcement is needed. No ceremony is required. The cell you leave may be invisible to everyone else, but you will feel the air change. You will notice that you have more room to love without swallowing, to speak without attacking, to receive without clinging, to stand without needing to be seen. You will discover that the dignity you sought in victory was already waiting in surrender, the surrender not of your will, but of your fear. And when the day ends, and the old echoes call you back to the familiar corridors, remember, freedom is not a single gate you pass once. It is a path you keep. You will wander, you will forget, then you will remember and turn again. Each return is not failure, it is fidelity. The soul that chooses freedom today will be able to love more deeply tomorrow, to work more cleanly, to face pain more wisely, and, when the time comes, to meet death not as a thief, but as a messenger. We tend to treat joy and sorrow like rival claimants. One should win and the other should lose. Kahlil Gibran refuses that contest. In his poetry, they are twins, born of the same depth, drawing from the same spring. If love teaches us how to open, and freedom teaches us how to stand, then joy and sorrow teach us how to hold what comes without breaking ourselves against it. Gibran's most important shift is simple and demanding. Sorrow is not a mistake, and joy is not a reward. They are both revelations. Sorrow reveals how deep the soul already goes. Joy reveals how bright it can become. In the prophet, he pictures them as a single vessel. The cup that can hold sweetness was first shaped by heat. The point is not to romanticize suffering, but to understand its alchemy. When life burns away the husk, the capacity that remains is not emptiness, it is room. And when joy finally comes, there is somewhere for it to live. One of Gibran's central lessons is that sorrow is a teacher of proportion. When something precious leaves, someone we love, a future we imagined, a certainty we depended on, our first instinct is to shrink the world to the size of that loss. Gibran does the opposite. He asks us to become larger than what we have lost, not larger by denial, but larger by truth, naming the wound, tracing its edges, and then keeping the doors of the heart unlocked so the rest of life can still enter. When the shell that enclosed our understanding cracks, he suggests, the cracking is not the end of understanding. It is the beginning of a new kind, one that can recognize other people's pain without panicking and can welcome other people's joy without envy. But if sorrow enlarges the vessel, joy fills it with meaning. Gibran is not naive about joy. He never treats it as a possession. Joy is a visitation. You host it. You do not own it. That is why he counsels loosened hands. Let joy pass through you the way music passes through a room, transforming everything it touches without needing to be trapped. The moment we seize joy and demand it stay, it begins to fade. Like breath, joy renews itself by being released. Gibran also warns against confusing pleasure with joy. Pleasure is a welcome note in the music of a day. Joy is the music itself. Pleasure, taken wisely, refreshes. Pleasure made into a law dulls. He invites us to receive delight without turning it into our master, and to notice how quickly relief becomes addiction when we are afraid to feel. If pleasure is a flower, let it bloom and pass. Do not uproot the garden to preserve a single stem. So how do we live this twin wisdom when the weather changes by the hour? Gibran's answer is not a technique, it is a posture. How we meet each season, how we talk to our own hearts, and how we stay in honest company with others. First, he urges consent to reality. Sorrow unacknowledged does not disappear, it disperses and hardens. You feel it as irritability, as endless scrolling, as talk that cannot slow down enough to be true. Consent is not surrender to despair, it is the decision to stop lying to yourself. This hurts, said without dramatics or apology, is the beginning of wisdom. It opens the window so air can move, and with it, clarity. Second, he teaches reverence for thresholds. There are moments when life shifts, births, deaths, departures, returns, diagnoses, reconciliations. Gibran treats these as sacred gates. Joy asks for courage here because receiving good news without a protective cynicism feels risky. Sorrow asks for courage here because letting the heart be seen in its tenderness feels exposed. Mark these thresholds. Give them time, a walk, a prayer, a candle, a call to a friend. Ceremony is one way we teach the soul to pay attention. Third, he recommends company that can hold both. The wrong company makes you prove you're okay or prove you're miserable. The right company makes no such bargains. You can laugh, then cry, and no one keeps a ledger. In Gibran's world, friendship is the house where both weather systems are welcome. Seek those houses, build them for others. A world so noisy about triumph and so awkward about grief needs people who can normalize both, who can sit in light without gloating and sit in shadow without flinching. Fourth, he He calls us to practice daily balance. This does not mean forcing symmetry, equal minutes of happiness and sadness. It means refusing extremes of avoidance or indulgence. When joy rises, attend to it. Note what opened the door, a conversation, a task well done, a tree in evening light. Train attention to recognize enlivening sources so you can return to them. When sorrow rises, attend to it as well. Where is it in the body? What story is it telling? What does it ask? Rest, repair, a boundary, a goodbye? Naming these specifics turns a storm into weather you can walk through. Fifth, he points to creative expression as channel. Joy and sorrow, unexpressed, either calcify or flood. Write, draw, sing, pray, work with your hands. Do it badly at first, if you must. The point is not excellence, it is honesty. Joy shared becomes generosity. Sorrow shaped becomes wisdom. This is one reason Gibran's own lines feel like carved wood. He let life mark him. Then he shaped the marks into something that could shelter others. There is another paradox Gibran embraces. Sorrow can be a form of praise, not because pain is good, but because love is real. We grieve what mattered. In that sense, grief honors meaning. When we refuse grief, we do not protect ourselves. We dilute love's testimony. Learn to let sorrow say, "This was worth everything." Then let it finish its sentence. And because it was worth everything, I will live more truly in its light. Joy, too, can be a form of responsibility. It's not merely for private consumption, it is strength to be used. After joy visits, spend it on kindness, on patience, on the work that awaits. Let it make you warmer to your family and braver in your choices. Gibran keeps returning to this ethical turn. Inner experiences are not collectibles, they are fuel for a life that serves. For communities, Gibran's teaching matters because it breaks the shame around sorrow and the suspicion around joy. In many places, sadness is treated like failure and happiness like foolishness. He corrects both. Shared grief becomes solidarity, shared joy becomes culture. Imagine workplaces that allow a moment to acknowledge loss, families that celebrate small victories without irony, friendships that remember anniversaries of both weddings and funerals. This is not sentimentality, it is architecture for durable hearts. What about those seasons when sorrow lingers and joy is nowhere to be found? Gibran would not rush you. Some winters are long. He would suggest small lights, a daily walk, a fixed hour when you do one helpful thing, a limit on the substances and screens that promise escape but deliver fog, a vow to keep talking to at least one person who can hear you. He would also ask you to watch for the quiet forms of joy, satisfaction after honest work, a moment of beauty you didn't manufacture, a word that lands and steadies you. When joy is scarce, we learn to recognize it by its modesty. And if you are in a season of bright joy, Gibran would bless it and remind you that humility protects it. Do not show it to the world like a trophy. Carry it like water. Pour it where it is needed. Guard the simple practices that helped you arrive. Rest, attention, truthfulness, gratitude. Joy is not a finish line. It is a visitor who returns more often to houses where peace has been kept. The aim is not to achieve a permanent mood. It is to become trustworthy with whatever mood we are given. Joy without depth becomes noise. Sorrow without hope becomes heaviness. Together they form a music that makes us human and humane. We become people who do not panic at the sight of tears and do not apologize for laughter. We widen. We learn to offer our presence as a place where others can bring their weather and still be welcomed. This is Gibran's promise. If you consent to the full range of the heart, life will not be easier, but it will be richer, and you will be able to love in ways that survive real time. The world does not need more performances of happiness. It needs more people who can hold both light and dark without lying about either. That is strength. That is maturity. That is the cup, fired and filled. We often think of work as what we must do so that later we can live. Kahlil Gibran turns that timeline inside out. Work, he says, is not a detour from life. It is one of the truest places life happens. To him, work is love taking shape. Love that becomes bread, shelter, song, software, stitches, spreadsheets, gardens, counsel, and care. When our hands move with the heart awake, the task before us ceases to be a transaction and becomes an offering. The first correction Gibran gives is dignity. No honest labor is small in his world. The planter who places a seed in the ground participates in a mystery that began before him and will continue after him. The mason who sets a stone straight is aligning more than walls. He is aligning his spirit. The teacher who steadies a child's attention is not merely delivering content. She is opening a window so light can enter a lifetime. The coder who names a variable with care, the nurse who adjusts the pillow with gentleness, the driver who chooses patience over haste. These are not embellishments on real work. They are the measure of it. Gibran's image for work is musical. When you work with your whole self, you become like a flute through which the hours breathe their song. The point is not perfection, it is willingness to be hollowed out so that something finer than your moods can pass through you. This is why techniques alone never satisfy. You can master a process and still feel empty if you have not consented to be an instrument. Conversely, you can be a beginner and still transmit grace if you show up with attention and love. Because he takes work so seriously, Gibran also refuses pretenses around it. If you cannot work with love, if you bring only bitterness, cynicism, or contempt, then pause. Better to sit at the threshold and examine your heart than to profane the altar of your hours. This is not permission to quit responsibility at the first discomfort. It is an invitation to convert your posture. Ask, what would it look like to bring love here? Not romance, not sentimentality. Love as steadiness, honesty, craft, and service. In many cases, the task does not need to change. The way we hold it does. He links work and purpose not by telling you to find your passion as if it were a single hidden object, but by asking you to bring passion to what is already in your hands. Purpose isn't only discovered, it is made, day by day, in the quality of attention you give. When you sweep a floor with reverence, you clean more than dust. You clean the room's atmosphere. When you answer an email with clarity and goodwill, you reduce friction in the common life. Purpose often reveals itself after such faithfulness, not before it. Gibran's chapter on work pairs naturally with his meditation on giving. You give little, he suggests, when you give only things. You truly give when you give of yourself. Work is the daily way most of us give ourselves. To bring your mind, your patience, your ingenuity, your humor, your calm, that is wealth beyond salary. Of course, wages matter, justice matters. But even when the paycheck is fair, the soul starves if the work is cut off from giving. A simple question can rejoin them. Who is served, and how can I serve them better? Suddenly, a routine task becomes a site for generosity. Suddenly, your skills are not defenses but gifts. This vision does not float above the ground. It meets us in what many call burnout. Burnout, in Gibran's light, is not only too much work, it is too much work forsaken by meaning. When outcomes devour origins, when metrics eclipse mercy, when pace erases presence, the song goes thin. The remedy is not always less work. Sometimes it is truer work, or the same work held with truer motives. Rest is part of that truth. An instrument played without pause warps. Rest is not abandonment of devotion, it is devotion's repair. So how do we practice this? How do we let work become love made visible? Begin with attention. Attention is love's first labor. Give the task your full presence for the span you promised it. Single task when you can. Close the extra window. Put your phone out of reach. Attend to materials, edges, names, and transitions. Attention dignifies what it touches and returns dignity to the one who offers it. Add integrity. Let inner and outer match. Do not say yes out of fear when you mean no out of truth. Do not overpromise to feel generous and then underdeliver and feel resentful. Keep your word, and if you must change it, communicate. Integrity is the quiet architecture of trust, and trust compounds into purpose. Practice craft. Learn the tools of your trade and honor them. Sharpen the blade, refactor the function, revise the paragraph, check the math, ask for feedback with a calm ego. Craft is love for the form of things, for doing them so well that they hold up under use and time. Embrace service. Visualize the person at the end of your work. See their face. Imagine their constraints. Consider their fears. Ask what would make their day easier and your product kinder. Service rescues work from self-display and remarries it to meaning. Protect boundaries. Love also says no. Close the laptop. Leave the office. Stop tinkering. Go walk. Play with your children. Call your friend. Boundaries do not diminish devotion. They keep it human. The goal is not to squeeze infinite output from a finite life. The goal is to give yourself in sustainable ways so the giving can continue. Invite silence into the day. A minute between meetings, 3 breaths before you speak, a short walk without headphones. These pockets of quiet let your motives settle. Without silence, work tends to impersonate urgency. With silence, urgency takes its rightful size. Join community. Work is not a solitary religion. Gibran City needs many hands. Share knowledge freely. Mentor someone. Ask to be mentored. Trade tips. Celebrate others' good work without envy. Where workplaces build cultures of real praise and reliable candor, people can bring love to their tasks without feeling naive. Hold money wisely. Money is a form of thanks, not the meaning of the work. If the pay makes exploitation of yourself or others a condition, step back and consider change. If the pay is fair, receive it with gratitude and keep your soul free. Not for sale to the next shiny outrage or the next grand bargain that requires you to betray your heart. Finally, keep a vow. A small daily pledge you can keep is more transformative than a grand promise you cannot. Today I will do one task unhurried. I will fix one thing I can see is wrong. I will write one honest paragraph. I will treat one difficult person with quiet dignity. Keep such vows, and the day will acquire backbone. Break them gently and begin again tomorrow. In all of this, Gibran invites us to see work not as a ladder to climb, but as an altar to serve at. The question shifts from how far can I rise to how much love can pass through me without obstruction. You may indeed rise, titles, income, influence, but these become byproducts, not the point. The point is to make yourself porous to good so that what you touch is better for having met you. The baker's loaf is warm because she welcomed heat. The writer's line is clear because he welcomed truth. The leader's meeting is humane because they welcomed listening. In that sense, the world is constantly inviting us to become artisans of the day. And when fatigue visits, as it will, remember the ancient rhythm: work, give, rest, return. Let rest restore the instrument so tomorrow's song can be played with clean hands. Let gratitude end the evening. Gratitude not for a perfect day, but for a day in which you showed up, tried, and learned. Then sleep with a prayer for the ones your work will touch, known and unknown. This too is love made visible. We learn who we are in 3 sanctuaries: the child we guide, the friend we keep, and the home we build together. Kahlil Gibran writes to each of these with a clarity that disarms our pride and strengthens our tenderness. If love opens the heart, freedom steadies it, joy and sorrow deepen it, and work gives it form. Then children, friendship, and belonging are where that formed heart learns to live among others without losing its light. On children, Gibran begins where many of us most easily confuse love with ownership. Children arrive like dawn, ours to welcome, not to command. He says simply, "Your children are not your children. They are life's longing, carried through us as a river carries stars. We can give them shelter, stories, food, and example. We cannot give them souls, for the soul does not pass by inheritance. They come through you, not from you." A parent's humility becomes a child's atmosphere. What does this humility look like? It looks like space. Space for questions without rushing to tidy answers. Space for mistakes without the verdict of shame. Space for difference without the pressure to resemble the parent's unlived dreams. It looks like steady presence, not constant entertainment, not anxious fixing, but the kind of nearness that makes courage possible. It looks like discipline that teaches consequence without humiliating the heart. It looks like wonder that refuses to let the adult eye grow blind to small miracles, a leaf's geometry, a sentence newly learned, laughter that comes with its own light. Gibran's most enduring image is of the bow and the arrow. The child is the arrow, alive with direction, built for distance. The parent is the bow, curved by love, held steady by faith, strong enough to accept the tension required to launch another life toward its horizon. The bow does not decide the arrow's destination. It honors the flight. The gift is not control, it is aim, helping the young turn away from whatever shrinks them and toward whatever enlarges them in truth. If you are the child now grown, Gibran would bless your right to become yourself. You honor your parents best not by shrinking into their expectations, but by bringing forth the work, kindness, wisdom, and courage that are uniquely yours. Gratitude does not require mimicry. Respect does not require consent to smallness. The house you came from may have been warm, cold, or both. Either way, you get to build rooms of your own choosing now. On friendship. If parenthood teaches us to love without possession, friendship teaches us to love without bargaining. A friend, Gibran says, is not an audience for our best moments or a mirror for our vanity. Your friend is your needs answered. That sentence asks for honesty. Needs answered is different from needs exploited. The friend answers as one who serves, not as one who keeps score. Gibran's friendship is household and harvest. He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving. Friendship asks for planting, time, attention, truth, delight. It asks for weeding, conversations that clear misunderstanding before it thickens into judgment. It asks for harvest, gratitude that names the goodness you have received so the giver hears it and is heartened to continue. There is a grammar to the conversation between real friends. You do not manage impressions. You practice truth without theatrics. You do not make the other responsible for your weather. You bring your weather honestly and keep your agency. You do not punish silence. You learn to trust it. In the dew of little things, Gibran whispers, the heart wakes. A brief message at the right hour, a shared meal without spectacle, a walk that leaves both souls quiet. These are not small. They are the dew that keeps the meadow alive. Friendship becomes rare when we let agreement replace affection. Gibran protects us from that poverty. If we require sameness of politics, tastes, schedules, and wounds, we will end with a very tidy and very lonely life. True friendship prefers depth over duplication. It can disagree without dividing and advise without controlling. It refuses satire as a substitute for wisdom. It refuses flattery as a substitute for love. It dares to say no when yes would be easier, and yes when distance would be safer. If you are searching for such friends, Gibran would ask you to become one. Offer steadiness where the world offers spectacle. Keep confidences in a time of performance. Bring presence to a culture of distraction. Listen for what your friend means when the words are clumsy. Cheer their growth even when it pulls them into circles beyond your reach. And if a friendship must change form through distance, season, or differing paths, let affection remain. A friendship retired with gratitude still blesses. On belonging, houses, and home. Belonging is where children and friendship meet, the space we create in which people can become themselves without forfeiting connection. Gibran's meditation on houses offers a piercing line. Your house is your larger body. The walls we build reflect our inner posture. If our souls are cramped with fear, our homes close themselves into fortresses. If our souls are porous with trust, our homes turn into thresholds where life can come and go without theft. What makes a house a home then? Not square footage or fashion, but welcome. A home is a place where peace is practiced. Peace not as silence that forbids feeling, but as order that allows feeling to be held. It is a place where work rests and people matter more than plans. It is a place where beauty is kept simple so that gratitude has room to breathe. Light on a table, bread on a plate, a chair that invites conversation rather than display. Gibran warns against the kind of shelter that becomes confinement, a house so comfortable that we forget the sky. Every home needs windows that open, habits that keep us connected to the wider life, neighborliness, service, walks that return us to earth, breaks from the screens that dilate want and shrink attention. Belonging suffocates when it becomes a club. It thrives when it becomes a commons, a place others can enter and leave with dignity. He also invites us to build inner rooms, spaces of stillness no one else decorates. Without an inner home, outer homes turn into stages where we rehearse impressiveness. With an inner home, even a small apartment becomes a monastery of kindness. You can sit in a chair, breathe, remember why you are alive, and arise ready to bless whoever crosses your threshold next. Belonging extends beyond address. We belong to workplaces when our gifts are welcomed and our boundaries respected. We belong to cities when we treat strangers as neighbors. We belong to traditions when we receive wisdom without becoming prisoners of imitation. We belong to the earth when we let our consumption be guided by reverence instead of appetite. Each belonging asks for the same virtues: attention, honesty, generosity, and the courage to correct what harms the common life. Practices to keep these sanctuaries alive. With children, ask more than instruct. What did you notice today? What do you think is fair? Let their voice practice carrying weight in a safe place so it can carry weight in the world. With friends, schedule smallness. 10 minutes of undistracted presence beats an hour of half attention. Send the message you think of sending. Name the good you see. Apologize quickly and specifically. Forgive as maintenance, not as a last resort. At home, accurate thresholds. A little ritual when people arrive, tea, music, a candle, tells the soul it is safe here. Keep one table uncluttered, keep one corner ready for silence. Let gratitude touch your meals before the first bite. In community, practice neighborliness that expects nothing back. Carry a spare kindness in your pocket. A hello, a door held, a name remembered, a complaint turned into a request. These are small and they change air. Finally, remember that each sanctuary informs the others. Children raised with dignity become adults who can be friends without fear. Friends who tell each other the truth become neighbors who can differ without malice. Homes that value quiet and welcome make streets gentler, and streets made gentle help the next child walk to school in courage. Gibran's promise is not utopia, it is formation. These practices will not erase sorrow or conflict. They will make us big enough to carry them without punishing one another for being human. In such a life, the child is launched with blessing, the friend is received without disguise, and the house becomes a lantern. Belonging ceases to be a possession and becomes a gift we keep giving. Room by room, conversation by conversation, day by day. We arrive at a door most people would rather pass quickly or not at all. Kahlil Gibran does not rush us. He stands with us there and changes the light. In his poetry, death is not an opposite to life, but its hidden companion, woven through our days the way the sea is present in every river. To speak of death for him is not to leave life. It is to gaze more honestly at life until it widens into something durable, something that can hold both hello and goodbye without breaking. Gibran's first move is to refuse the superstition that death is an interruption from elsewhere. He suggests that the secret we seek about the end is already alive at the center. The same breath that begins our first cry is the breath that completes our last sentence. If you want to understand death, he implies, attend to how you live. Learn to be present now, to love now, to forgive now. The one who has practiced these arts will not find death a foreign land. They will recognize its contours, as a traveler recognizes the shore they've long seen on the horizon. He prefers images to arguments. He likens death to harvest, not robbery. The field that has ripened in sun and storm is gathered, not lost. He likens it to shedding a garment that no longer fits the growing soul, stepping bare into a truer weather. He speaks of the river entering the sea without ceasing to be water, of the seed surrendering its shell so the hidden life can emerge. These images do not deny grief. They give grief a shape that courage can approach. If death belongs with life, our fear needs a new conversation partner. Much of what terrifies us is not mortality itself, but our attachment to what will not last. Our costumes, our roles, our collections of proof. Gibran gently asks, what of you endures? What will remain when titles and trophies fall silent? He answers by turning us toward qualities, not quantities. The love you gave, the truth you held, the work you did with clean hands, the mercy that passed through you. These are not erased by endings. They are the very material of continuation. To live with that awareness alters our scale. Petty victories shrink, essential vows deepen. Hurry loses its glamour, attention gains it. We begin to choose differently. Conversations over performances, reconciliation over righteousness, presence over perfection. Death, contemplated without panic, becomes a teacher of proportion. It does not make us morbid, it makes us precise. We stop spending days as if they were practice and start treating them as the music itself. Gibran's reflections on religion and prayer braid naturally here. He does not picture the sacred as a building we visit occasionally, but as a life we inhabit, a temple made of breath, intention, and care. Prayer, in his vision, is not escape from the world, but a widening within it. the heart opening its windows to a larger air. In that widening, death is not a door slammed, but a door opened further. The presence we sensed in our best hours, the one that made work feel meaningful, friendship feel holy, and silence feel full, remains. We do not carry it, it carries us. Grief enters this teaching not as an error, but as proof of love. We do not grieve because we have failed at detachment. We grieve because we have succeeded at connection. Gibran does not scold the mourner for tears. He honors them, and he refuses the lie that time alone heals. Time offers distance. What heals is transformation, letting sorrow carve us without making us hard, letting memory become responsibility, letting absence become a new form of presence that calls us to live in a way that would make our beloved recognize us still. What does that transformation look like in practice? It looks like speaking truths we postponed. It looks like forgiving before the ledger is balanced. It looks like making amends where we can and releasing ourselves where we cannot. It looks like little rituals that teach the body what the soul believes, lighting a candle at dusk for the one we miss, saying their name aloud at the table, finishing a task they began, giving in their honor. These gestures are not superstition, they are training in fidelity, fidelity to love that outlives circumstance. Gibran also restores dignity to the final season. He imagines the dying not as problems to manage, but as elders at the edge of the forest, teaching the tribe how to walk there. The best medicine and the best ministry share a posture, presence with clarity. We tell the truth kindly. We listen more than we correct. We honor the person, not only their symptoms. We make space for gratitude, blessing, and closure. We accept that silence often says what words cannot, and that laughter belongs even here, not as denial, but as reverence for the whole of a life. For those of us not yet at that threshold, there is a daily memento that changes everything. Remember, you are passing through, not to become careless, but to become careful in the right ways. Careful with how you speak when the day is tight. Careful with what you amplify when you are angry. Careful with how you trade your attention, the most mortal thing you own. The clock does not threaten in this remembrance, it clarifies. It asks, if this were the last evening of a season, how would you spend it? Whom would you bless? What half-finished kindness could you complete? Communities, too, can live this wisdom. A culture that learns how to accompany the dying becomes kinder for the living. Workplaces that allow bereavement to be real become more humane for ordinary stress. Schools that speak honestly about grief prepare children for a world where losses occur and love remains. Neighborhoods that mark endings with ritual, trees planted, bells rung, meals shared, become places where belonging outlasts presence. In such a soil, fear has fewer disguises, and courage has more chances to grow. Gibran's ultimate consolation is not an argument, but a stance. Stand where life and death meet without flinching, he says, and you will feel the same wind on both sides. The love that taught you to give yourself in work, to make room for your children and your friends, to endure joy and sorrow with a steady heart. That love is the larger life. Death does not swallow it, death reveals it. The task is not to conquer death. The task is to consent to be so alive that when death comes, it finds nothing to steal. So let this lesson leave you quieter and braver. Quieter because noise cannot defend you from endings, only truth can. Braver because endings cannot separate you from what you have become through love. Live so that your last day, whenever it comes, reads like the final paragraph of a faithful chapter. Not perfect, not tidy, but clear. Clear in whom you served, what you cherished, and how you returned what you were given. And when that hour arrives for someone you love, go with them as far as you can. Sit, breathe, tell a true story. Place your hand on theirs and let gratitude do what language cannot. When you step back into the daylight, carry their light forward, not as weight, but as warmth. Let it change how you spend your mornings, how you answer your messages, how you greet strangers, how you rest. In this way, love keeps its promise. It outlasts us by living through us until the river we are becomes the sea we have always been moving toward.